Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are continuing in Mark chapter 6. Now, as Jesus is drawing closer to the death and burial and resurrection, he performs some of his greatest miracles during this time. Um, and so, um, So we're going to see that in this chapter. But let me say this because we left off last time with talking about the execution of John the Baptist. And that's such a bizarre story because, again, you see how corrupt power, okay, is in play. John was, and everybody knew, excuse me, John as a righteous prophet. Everybody knew that. Reality, and here's the interesting thing here, that even the Pharisees liked John. They liked John. They hated Jesus, but they liked John. Herod was intrigued, and even though you could say John got on his nerve, especially when he told him that he was unlawful. And a lot of times people don't like that when you tell the truth. That, So when he said that, then John's wife, who was actually his brother's wife, and just so we can say that that was not a God ordained or a God recognized marriage, but it got under her skin to the point that when she had the opportunity, she had her daughter, who danced in a lewd dance before them, asked for the head of John the Baptist. And I often wonder about that. I often wonder about, how did that look? How did that make you feel? Now, I know probably it was satisfying to kill her enemy. Don't think that people are always guilty or feel guilty about their acts. The hardness of sin in the human heart. And so people do not feel guilty. But I just kind of wondered, did she have the platter of John's head, right? Let's say this is the platter. And did she just look at it, and just stare at it? And did she get satisfaction from looking at John the Baptist's head? It's, again, just amazing. All right, so let's get back to this. I mean, chapter 6. So then it says, I want to go back at it, verse 28. It says, let me go back to 27 and just kind of read this again. The king immediately sent for an executioner and commanded him to bring John's head. So he went and beheaded him in prison, brought his head on a platter, and gave it to the girl. And then the girl gave it to her mother. Here, mother, here's the gift. Not exactly Tiffany's, not exactly Macy's, right? Here's the gift. And when his disciples heard about it, they came to remove his corpse, meaning the headless body, and placed it in the tomb. So I wonder what ever happened to the head of John the Baptist. And I no doubt somebody's going to come along and probably try to claim, try to claim that they found the head of John the Baptist. I wouldn't put it past some of these people. Verse 30 says, now the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Remember, he sent them out on sort of like a training mission. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a remote place and rest for a while. For many people were coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. Now, notice then he tells them to rest after coming up on the trip. I say that because workaholics, and that includes those in the ministry, workaholics, okay, workaholics that oh, excuse me, workaholics who work themselves. That's not, God never told you to work yourself or overwork yourself. So verse 32, so they went away in a boat by themselves to a remote place, but when he saw them leaving and recognized them, and people ran there by land from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. So as he stepped ashore, he saw a huge crowd and had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Then he began to teach them many things. Okay, I want you to see the setup here that one, Jesus did not have scorn for the people. Notice he had compassion for the people. He had compassion for the crowd. And notice that they were with Jesus a long period of time as he was teaching them. They were sitting under his, listening to him teach. Verse 35, and when it was already late, his disciples approached him and said, this place is a wilderness, and it is already late. Send them away so they can go in the surrounding countryside and villages by themselves and buy themselves something to eat. Now send them away. Verse 37 said, you give them something to eat. He responded, and they said to him, should we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and to give them something to eat? Now, a denarii was a day's wage. So this was over a year's wage that they're talking about. And he asked them, how many loaves do you have? Go look. And when they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. Then he instructed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in ranks of hundreds and fifties. And then he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, looking up to heaven. He blessed and broke the loaves. He kept giving them to his disciples to set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. Everyone ate and was filled, and they picked up the baskets full of pieces of bread. 12 baskets full of pieces of bread of fish. It says, now those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. Now remember, unfortunately, they didn't count the women and children. They only counted the men. So we could say that this crowd easily was 15,000. Depending on how you numbered the families. If they had 1 child, 2 child, 5 children, 6 children. Now here's what's interesting. That Jesus, think about this. If you just took your, you go to McDonald's and you buy a fish sandwich. So, right, bread and fish, just a sandwich. I think it's around $3 to $4. And then if you multiply that by 5, let me see if I can do some math here quickly. So let's say a McDonald's, right? And I'm going to say $3 to $4 just for the sandwich. Just for the sandwich, okay? I'm going to use $4, okay? $4 times 5,000. So that would be 20,000, right? 20,000, but that's just for the men. And let's just say, we're going to say $4 times 15,000. And that would be $60,000. Now, I'm going to say that number certainly could fluctuate and be higher because excuse me, not everyone had one child, right? So the 15,000 is based upon if everybody was married and if everybody had one child. Of course, that number varies because not everyone there was married or whatever. But anyway, so anywhere from 20,000, right, $60,000 by today's standard, and that's just a McDonald's sandwich, just one sandwich. We weren't giving out fries and the Coke, okay, back then. All right, but just but on today's salary, to think about that, and yet by his power he multiplied. Now, by their standards, they were estimating about 200 days work pay. Okay, so over half a year, but 200 days of a day. So, and again, so by any means, you're spending a lot of money. And if you go to a banquet hall with that kind of crowd, you're going to spend probably more than that. And then guess what? You're not going to get filled. You're not going to get filled. But they ate and were filled. So some came back for seconds, thirds, whatever. Okay. So again, I look at that. It's just kind of an interesting fact about how the miracle, this miracle, he fed and then they were satisfied. Okay. Now, verse 45, immediately he made his disciples get into a boat and go ahead of him to the other side of Bethsaida. And while he dismissed the crowd, after he said goodbye to them, he went away into the mountain to pray. And when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. And he saw them being battered as they rolled, because the wind was against them. Now, what's interesting about this story is that Jesus is in the mountain as they were kind of rowing in the sea, the lake, right? So, one, it could have been an extremely clear night. And you can have a windy night, a clear night and it's windy. Or maybe as the Son of God, he had that Son of God vision, okay? But he saw them. He was able to see them rolling, and it was extremely windy though, right? So, verse 48, he saw them being battered as they rolled because the wind was against them. And around 3 in the morning, he came toward them walking on the sea and wanted to pass by them. And when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought he was a ghost and cried out. For they all saw him and were terrified. And immediately he spoke with them and said, "Have courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Then he got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased, and they were completely astonished because they had not understood about the loaves. Instead, their hearts were hardened. I'm going to come back to that statement in a moment, but notice again how he was going to walk past them, right? So you're going to be like, "Well, that's bogus, Jesus," right? And they were terrified because, again, who has ever seen anyone walk on the water? Absolutely no one. So they saw that. So think about this. Not even the crowd saw this miracle, but his disciples saw this miracle, and they were terrified. Now, Mark brings out something interesting here, that they were completely, he says, astounded. Why? Because they had not understood about the loaves. And notice he throws this in. Instead, their hearts were hardened. That's kind of interesting. When you talk about a hardened heart, now a hardened heart in and of itself is not necessarily denoting a sinful heart. But if you think about when someone tries to convince you of something, then you refuse to be convinced. That's hardness of your heart. I remember many, many years ago, I wanted to do something. And not only did I want to do something, not only did I convince myself that it was right, But watch this. I hardened my heart and I didn't tell people because I knew they would not agree. I knew they would say, you're making a bad decision. That was a hard heart. By the way, I paid dearly for that. That foolishness, I paid dearly for that. I think it took me over a year. But notice he said they hardened their heart. Now, so let's go back. Why would they be astonished? Why would this astonish them? Had he not, he just fed over 5,000 people, close to around 15,000 people. So why would that astonish them? Right? He says because their hearts were hardened. He's going to make this statement again about that. It gives insight sometimes to the human heart. How you sometimes I could probably put it like this: every denominational person could have a hard heart by virtue of being in their denomination. Okay, that they're gonna promote their denomination over even the Word of God. And when you get to that point, that's a hard heart. Where you're going to promote theology over the Word of God. All right. And this also going to play a part in too with the disciples, the kind of heart they will have leading up to Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. Verse 53, it says, when they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret and beached the boat. As they got out of the boat, people immediately recognized him. And they harried throughout the vicinity and began to carry the sick en masse to wherever they heard he was. And whenever he would go into the villages, the towns, and the country, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch just the tassel of his robe. And everyone who touched it was made well. Now, he wasn't taken by surprise. If you remember the woman with the issue of blood for 12 years, caught him by surprise. He said, "Who touched me? Power has gone out of me." And I don't know if these people are referencing that event, but whatever it is, they said, "Hey, if we touch the tassel of his robe," notice he said, "they would be well." And then everyone who touched it was made well. Okay, everyone who touched it was made well. And I want to say this again. Notice that Jesus' ministry, that true healing ministries, always heal the sick. And I have to say this because, this in the ministries today, and it's not just in America. I think social media, which, the advent of communications has brought the world closer. So it's not like they wasn't there. It's just we didn't see them, and now we're able to see more of the just frauds, the people who pretend to be healers. And here's the thing: if you're not gifted with that, don't play, because see, people get hurt by that. People do. People get hurt. People get hurt. So, all right. Chapter 7 next time. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. And I will see you in the next study.